My name is Isabella Lubin. I'm a group product manager at Google Cloud. We're going to go over three things. I'll talk a little bit about Google Cloud databases. And then what I really want to focus on today is two ways in which agents are transforming the application development lifecycle. So first, we're going to talk about how agents are making the ways that we build applications faster than ever. And then we're going to talk about how agents are making the actual management of the databases that power those applications extremely seamless. And I think the pairing was really, really solid because a lot of what you talked about, I think I'm going to echo. So first, really quickly, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but just an overview of the offerings for Google Cloud databases. Our goal is to make sure that across the spectrum of your application needs, we have a database service that is going to give you the compatibility, the scalability, the performance that you need. Whether that's an in-memory database with memory store, a traditional open source relational database like Postgres, or Spanner, the database that powers many of the Google services that we all use. And across the spectrum of databases, one of the core tenets that we have is that AI needs to meet you where you are. So you shouldn't need to change to a specialized database just to be able to take part in this AI transformation that we're all experiencing. So a quick example there, among other services, one of the products that I lead is Cloud SQL for MySQL. So we run managed MySQL in the cloud. And one of the things that we were hearing from customers was that it was very hard for them to start thinking about how to integrate vector search into their applications because the community at that time had not brought in vector search for MySQL, right? There's a lot of momentum around Postgres with PG Vector, but customers who are running MySQL said, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this with MySQL. Do I need to think about doing a data migration? Do I need to think about adopting a specialized vector DB and integrate that into my application? And so, as part of that, we built in vector storage into Cloud SQL. We added a vector index using Google's open source scan library because the core principle is that you should be able to use the database that you're already using. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We have a booth. Come find us. Again, what I really want to talk about is this transformation that I think we all heard about. That the way that we are building and managing applications is changing. And I think you guys highlighted it really well, right? This process that we have been following is extraordinarily manual. Now you can build in automation, right? A lot of customers I talk to are using Terraform for managing resources or deploying resources, but that automation is dependent on your team to build. So you have this manual process of you have to design an application, right? You have to actually develop it. You have to deploy it. You have to reactively handle issues that happen in production. To this agent-first process, where agents are accelerating every single step that you've been doing manually. And we can split this into two primary categories, right? The first is how you develop. So developers working in their favorite IDE, how they're using agents to accelerate the design and development of both applications from scratch and adding new capabilities. And then the second pillar of this is operations. And this is all about your DevOps team, your DBAs, your admins, SRE, who are trying to manage these applications that have been deployed in production and make sure that they're online, they're scaling as the workload changes, they're proactively responding to issues in performance or degradations in performance. So while we have these two different phases, under the hood, they're using a common layer, which is MCP. So MCP, Model Context Protocol, is a very popular standard that people are using for connecting agents to resources or agents to databases. And one of the things that I want to talk about is a recent release that we had of managed MCP for Google Cloud, and specifically for Google Cloud databases. So one of the things that we've been hearing from a lot of customers is they've started using MCP for connecting agents to resources. But I think as you folks talked about, agents can be non-deterministic. There are a lot of risks that folks are concerned about deploying agents against production resources and then potentially seeing, hey, is this agent going to delete a database? I think everyone saw whatever that LinkedIn post was about an agent just deleting production, right? So we hear a lot of those concerns. And so, the value of managed MCP is that it brings in a number of capabilities. First, if you're using IAM with Google Cloud, that's built in. So you can use the same IAM, you can use the same database roles you're already using for governing users that are connecting to your databases. The second is that you can enforce read-only tools. So if you have specific projects where you say, hey, look, this agent should not be able to modify the schema of my data, right? It should not be able to delete a table. You can enforce that the agent is only using these read-only tools to ensure that you have that governance boundary in place. All of these MCP tool calls are audited, so you can go back and look at what tools agents are calling to perform actions, so you understand what they're actually doing. And then it's integrated with Model Armor. So Model Armor will, once you enable it, will take a look at the requests that are going in and help monitor to prevent things like prompt injection. So it can, make sure that these agents are actually being, you're monitoring for those types of threats. Very easy to use. We have dedicated MCP servers for all of the different database products that I talked about very briefly at the start. You don't have to go and deploy this yourself. It's a managed service that you can connect to right away. So I want to really quickly show you what this looks like in action. I know we only have 15 minutes. I'll be honest, I ran through this. We'll see if we actually get through all of the content. But I have all of the slides, so you can come find me at the booth at the end. So what I want to show is a development process using Claude and these managed MCP servers. And I'm going to show two different MCP servers. I'm going to show connecting to a Cloud SQL MCP server, and I'm going to show connecting to an MCP server for a service called Knowledge Catalog, which gives you a view of your data estate across different Google Cloud services. So it will give you a view of the data assets you have in BigQuery, in Cloud SQL, in Spanner, so that you can understand what is the schema of data that I have across my portfolio, and be able to quickly identify that data for the purpose of building agents that are going to interact with it. I'm using Claude in this demo in part because I think we're all using different tools, right? Your development team, some of you have started using Google products, that's great. Some of you may already be using other ones. We want to make sure that if you have a data asset that's in Google Cloud, that you can access it directly through your favorite IDE. So I'm going to show you this. It's a video. We'll see if I'm going to try to show you this video. I'm going to awkwardly crane my head so I can start and stop. Okay, so we're going to do three things. We're going to show the configuration of the MCP servers in Claude. We're going to search for database tables, and then we're going to prompt for database changes that we want to make for a new feature that we want to make to our existing data. So you can see, here we're connecting to two different managed MCP servers, the one for Cloud SQL, the one for Knowledge Catalog. And we have a change that we want to make. So, we already have a data structure. We want to add in location, nearest location for an e-commerce site. And so what this will do, connecting to this Knowledge Catalog, is identify what are the data assets where this location information is going to be relevant. So you can see it's identified the tables and the schemas where I might need to do an update for adding in this location information. It's going to flag a potential issue. So this table has addresses, but it doesn't have lat long. So if I'm going to do nearest location, it's going to be hard for me to actually add that into the e-commerce site. So it's going to go and propose a potential change that we can make, which is adding in lat long to specific columns for this data schema so that I can add in this new capability. And I could say, okay, yes, please go ahead and execute this. Because, again, it's connected to two different MCP servers. It's connected to Knowledge Catalog. It's connected to a Cloud SQL, to the Cloud SQL MCP server. It can go and perform these updates for me. You can see it's adding in these columns. It's populating them with the data. Claude is checking to make sure that everything looks good. And we've updated it, right? So this new capability that we wanted to add around location, we can add directly in Claude using these managed MCP servers from Google Cloud. So let's say, okay, lat long is great, but there's this PostGIS extension for Cloud SQL that exists for Postgres. It's going to give me a little bit more accuracy. I want to actually change the way that I'm implementing this capability. I can tell Claude, hey, switch over to this. Claude will enable the extension where this is going to be relevant. It can go through and identify the tables where I need to make these updates to the change. It's installed the extension, it's going to perform the updates for me. And then you'll see, all of this without me actually needing to connect to these resources directly, right? There's no pSQL. Like, I'm doing this all from the IDE, updating my data to ensure that I can add in this new capability. So this is the power of managed MCP and MCP in general, right? You can have an agent directly from wherever you're working that is going to add in these new capabilities for you. And that's it, I'm done. And you'll see that it can actually go and validate to make sure that the query pattern has been updated. So that's it, that's all I gotta do. So that's one thing, right? That's one part of how actually developing these applications is becoming way, way easier. The second part that we talked about is how are my operations becoming much faster? And I think we've talked a lot about agents, kind of generally. There's a spectrum, right? There are these general agents that you can use, like Gemini and IDEs or Gemini CLI, that are good at performing many different tasks, all the way down to custom agents that you're building for very specific concrete goals that your organization has. And I think the example that Adobe highlighted is exactly that, right? They have specific workflows that they're trying to go through. They're building out agents for accomplishing those tasks. There are 3 specialized agents that within databases we announced like 2 weeks ago at Next. The first is an onboarding agent, which helps you identify the right database for your use case. The second is an observability agent, which will help you troubleshoot performance issues that are happening on your instance. And then the third is a testing agent, which is coming soon. And I think I'm technically over time. Can I show a quick demo? OK, I'm going to show this really quick demo. Testing agent, I'll just show the demo, and I'll talk through it as we go. OK, so this is in a surface area we have called Database Center. It's a view of all your data assets. And for specific performance recommendations, you can now see this validate, or you will be able to see this validate button once it launches. And what this is doing is building out a test plan for evaluating a performance change that we've made. So something like, hey, we've detected that your instance is under-provisioned. You don't have enough CPU for actually serving the workload that you have running. We recommend that you go and upgrade that instance. Obviously, upgrading an instance, it's more compute. You want to check to make sure that that's actually going to have an impact for your instance before you go and make the change. So it will show you a plan. You can update that plan to make sure that it's running a synthetic benchmark. Make sure that that benchmark is more closely matching what you're actually running in production. You want it to run for a little bit longer. And then you'll see as it executes this plan, it's going to analyze what you've asked it to do, clone your primary instance so it doesn't impact production, perform performance benchmarking, perform the change, so upsize this instance, perform the performance benchmarking again, and then allow you to validate between these 2 different runs whether or not this change is actually going to have a meaningful impact for your workload. So you can see like directly from the console, when this process where previously you would have to manually evaluate, wait a second, do I actually want to make this change? Is it going to be meaningful for me? You have that validation integrated directly in the console so that you can at least get an initial sense of whether or not this makes sense for your organization. So you can see here what you'll be able to see, this split of CPU utilization and whether or not it's improved between runs, comparison of latency. So the power of agents is that all of this can be automated for you. So there's still a human in the loop, right? You're still the one saying, yes, I want to make this change. But it's built directly into the tools that you're already using to help with that process of applying these changes and make production more resilient. So this was obviously very fast, right? We did this in like 16 minutes. But this transformation of manual lifecycle to this agent-first lifecycle is extremely powerful. If this is a journey you're already on, we'd love to talk to you. If it's a journey you haven't even started, again, we'd still love to talk to you. Come find us at the booth. And that is all I had. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Isabella.